Hello everyone! This is Beyblade behind the scenes, or coverage on it. I actually went to the event. It was hosted by Beyblade Geeks, and there was a rep from 80K Emotions Inc., as well as one rep from the design team. I've been clipping the certain segments, so I'll probably put a little bit of extra, but this one should just be how they design the bays from start to finish, and as well as prototypes for Slingshock and stuff like that. It's super interesting. Also, it does confirm that Hasbro is confined to like a budget. Not like a budget, like they're very confined to what they can do for cost and everything. You'll see in the video, like, I was surprised at what Slingshocks, the stadiums could have been. Because, like, my god, if it actually was like that, that'd be insane. But, yeah. You'll see it later on. I'm actually going to give my afterthoughts on at the end for this video. I usually don't do it for these videos, but considering the amount of info, I actually just want to talk about it a little bit. Just shed my own opinion on what I think about all those stuff. But, yeah.
Take it away.
Well, thank you for that setup.
All new Beyblade first collection battle set. Let it rip and dominate with the new dual rail system. Take your game to a whole new level. Ride the rails and unleash the power of Slingshock. The all-new Beyblade Burst Cross Collision Battle Set. First rate's guarantee. The one.
So, do you guys know what Slingshock is? Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to talk about it anyway. Alright, so... Alright, thank you. So, no, it's okay. Sorry. So, Slingshock is a unique system for Hasbro, where essentially the performance tips have a mode change, where they can switch between a Slingshock mode that allows them to ride the rails to get a speed boost and a power boost inside the new Slingshock stadiums. And essentially, we developed this with TAKARA TOMY. So, when we were setting out to do this, we had a bunch of goals in mind. First of which was we wanted a demonstrable new feature with a visual difference to distinguish it from previous play. But we wanted to make sure that it was built into the system of Generation 3, so it was compatible. It's enhanced, it's not separate. And we wanted to make sure that this actually felt like it was leveling up the play experience across all the elements, the tops, the stadiums, and the launchers. So yeah, so as I said before, we worked with TAKARA TOMY, who develops obviously the product in Japan. Hasbro then gives them inputs and the needs and the preferences for the Western markets, and then we work together and collaborate to make the new line. TAKARA TOMY develops the final product though for the Western market. And the two people that just popped up there are two people I work with every day. So the first one on your right? There, yeah, your left, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Is Hamasan. And so Hamasan is a TAKARA TOMY principal designer. And he is essentially the mastermind behind Beyblade Burst. His technical skills are just amazing, they're mind-blowing. And then the other person up there is Doug, and he's a Hasbro principal designer. And he's an integral part to the creation of Slingshock. He's essentially an in-house inventor who works with TAKARA TOMY on these new systems. So, okay. So, as you can see from these drawings here, we shot for the moon originally. We wanted all the rails, we wanted all the tracks, and then we were told what our package size could be and what our price point was, and then we're like, oh, okay, we gotta scale this down just a little bit. And essentially how this works is Doug, who I just showed you before, he works in CAD, and he develops these. And so then what we do is we actually rapid prototype the stadiums. And I have a visual reference. So this right here is one of the first prototypes for the stadium. As you can see, it's super chunky, super thick. And actually, if you try and play a Beyblade on this, it doesn't work because the texture is all wrong. So what we end up doing is actually vac forming. And if anybody is familiar with like the Star Wars universe, vac forming is how they make like stormtrooper armor and things like that. So this right here is the process of how we vac form. We load the grown stadium that you see right there into a machine. The machine then heats up the plastic, which you'll see in a second. That takes about a minute. And then it activates a vacuum, and the stadium pops up, and the vacuum sucks it down over it so that we get all the features and all the crevasses. So essentially that's this right here. And this texture is actually perfect then to play with a Beyblade on. It replicates how the actual stadium will be. So this is how we test everything. And then from this point on, everything is refined many, many, many times. All right, so then talking about the tips. So starting out, the tips didn't convert originally because we were just kind of messing around and seeing what we could do. But we experimented by modifying existing tips and testing their performances. And after proving out the concept, we wanted to make sure that the tips were backwards compatible with all the different stadiums, past and present. So that's when the transforming gimmick was added. And what we ended up doing is we used a rapid prototype machine to do that. We then sent the designs to TAKARA TOMY, and TAKARA TOMY, instead of using kind of our fragile rapid prototypes, they then used a very special machine that's called a CNC machine. And what this machine does is it actually mills out of plastic using just a very sharp knife. And I actually have a few samples. This is probably a little hard to see because it's dark, but essentially the first passes that we get from them are made out of this material. It's a harder plastic. It's very durable, so we can actually play with them and actually test out a bay, see what its stats can be, see how it performs, and then we can make our tweaks where we have to. But every once in a while they do break, and it's very depressing. And then next up, this is a video that we actually send out to all of our Beyblade team members across the world to kind of show them this is the concept that we're doing. So what you're seeing right now is basically the video that's sold in Slingshock. However, we're not playing with a shield at the moment. Please don't do that. Please play with a shield, just in case. All right. And then now I'm actually going to talk about some of the more unique Hasbro tops. Some of you probably know who are fans of the show. There's a few tops that come out in the Hasbro market that you don't see. That's because they're Hasbro unique, and we end up developing those with TAKARA TOMY. And all of these are based off of just Japanese gods, weapons, monsters, all that kind of thing. And the sketches that you see up here are actually drawn by Hama-san, the fellow that I showed you before. And his technical skills, as I said, are just freaking amazing. So you can kind of see with his first rough draft here, we took an Oni and a Kraken. So an Oni is like a Japanese ogre in their mythology, and then a Kraken is a giant squid that eats ships. And they're cool, they're awesome, so it's like, yeah, let's make a Beyblade of that. So you can kind of see that when starting out, the ogre started out with a club or a meat cleaver. And then Hama-san kind of roughly sketched out, oh, what would this character's arm look like? And so then the blades then evolved into his fingers, and that's the design that you have around the edge now. Yeah. So what you're seeing here is kind of the final line art. And then from here, this final line art is actually handed off to the digital sculptors, and the digital sculptors then bring it into CAD. And so this is the CAD. At this stage, it's sent over to the factories, and that's when we start getting in prototypes. And when they send prototypes in, they're always in weird colors. It's always just whatever was in the machine that day. So sometimes they're bright pink, sometimes they're blue. They're never right, but they're hilarious. So, yeah. So this one I have Spryzen Requiem up here, and he's all clear. I always think that's really cool. What's sad is we don't always keep these just because sometimes they don't function the way we want, because this is the stage where we review them to make sure it's like, okay, are they performing the way that we want them to? What tweaks do we have to make? And then after this is when I step in, and I actually start working on the deco. Deco is short for decoration. And basically that is the paint ops that go on the Beyblade. So from this stage then, you have the final product. So here is Ogre 04 and Kraken A4. Okay. And I saw a bunch of you playing on the app earlier, but how many of you have the Beyblade app? Us. Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. Yeah. All right, so as you all know, the Beyblade Burst app brings the excitement and energy of the Beyblade Burst to your own personal device. Basically, the tops, launchers, the stadiums, everything has a QR code that you can scan in and play with it digitally. It's a great reference for stats, rankings, all the parts of the tops that you can scan.
a lot to take in, and also I hope people understand that how close Hasbro and TAKARA TOMY actually work together. People for some reason think that Hasbro's like some separate entity. No, they work together with TAKARA TOMY in producing these bays. And it's really interesting, and it's also kind of cool how they kind of take away from each other. Like TAKARA TOMY sees Hasbro doing a lot less metal, whatever. And Union Achilles, even though it looks like it has metal, it's all metallic paint, like what Hasbro did with Turbo and whatever. And Hasbro did the RC stuff and the Ripfire, and then after we get Genesis Imperial Dragon, bays that are made with like the same sort of gimmicky stuff that Hasbro originally did with Burst. That was very like testy, and it's interesting. And when I saw the original prototype for that Slingshock Stadium, like, oh my god, that would have been insane. But I do understand it would have been way too much to produce, like so much money. Like to sell something that big would have to be at least over $500, at least. Are you kidding me? You saw how big that was with all the rails and whatever. I think the second one would have been a lot. I wish they could have done it. They talked a lot about costs in the boxing and everything, and how they have a certain amount, so they're like set to a limit, right? So that also can probably shed some light to why there's a lot of stuff that Hasbro actually can't do now. Like, I think if I'm gonna be honest, really, Lunar L3 probably only had the metal just because it was the only actual bay out of all the Evolution bays that actually just had one metal, or metal there. And Lunar L2 was only one bay. And then after when Chozi probably had all the metal, they couldn't handle it, so that's how they did it. And I think there's no metal just because of the cost just to do it. That's truthfully what I think. It's just the cost. Maybe it was also because of a nerf thing, whatever. Maybe they knew in the future that the base would get too strong and they couldn't work it out. I think it's maybe the idea of nerfing the bays and also costs. The costs have to be a factor in this when they literally talked about, oh, well, we were factoring in the box and everything to produce this stuff, we couldn't. So that does kind of shed some light, but also that would mean either way, even if the turbo bays on the layers had metal or not, the Slingshock gimmick would still exist. They still had the original plan for Slingshock. So no matter what, for Hypersphere or for the Slingshock line, we would have still had the gimmicky stuff. But that stadium, the second stadium that they showed for the Slingshock thing, honest to God, was like a TT stadium. I wish that we had a stadium like that, but we don't. And it is such a good design for the thing. It's a shame we couldn't get anything like that. And I wish Hasbro could operate at like full potential. It's kind of a shame that they are limited on what they could do for their creativity. And it is actually genuine like creativity with a lot of this stuff. And I'm a little bit upset they can't operate at like full capacity. But it is what it is. For the other stuff, like the design stuff, I don't really have much to say. It was just cool to see how it works. I'm really hopeful that for however long this keeps on going, I really do hope to see a lot more creative designs for these Hasbro exclusives. Because I think the Hasbro exclusives have some really sick designs. The only other thing, the process I'm kind of like iffy on was the Deca part when I talked about what decorations, whatever, right? So my issue with that is that, you know, I get the whole Deca thing, but you know, a lot of these Hasbro bays have very limited, like, what do you call it? Like, paint applications, all that stuff and whatever, and detail to it. So it was a little bit silly to talk about the Deca thing when Hasbro bays and like the layers really do not have that good of, not all of them, mind you. Some of them have great, and look great, but a lot of them seem to be missing detail or just feel a little bit too empty when you look at them. Like, all my Rise bays right now, I actually have to put the TT stickers on them just to make them look a little bit more appealing. But, you know, it is what it is. I actually want to hear a discussion in the comment section. You tell me your thoughts on this stuff. I'm going to try to see if I can get everything in the thumbnail. I have to get the concept of Slingshock Stadium there. I have to get the before and after of Ogre and Kraken. And hopefully I can fill everything up. But that'll be it for now. So thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day.